Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Taiwo Edele is here with us this morning. He's the Chairman, Presidential Tax and Fiscal Policy Reforms Committee. Thank you for your time again today.
Thank you for having me.
Nigerians have been wondering, when is this thing going to take off? I mean, by now, prices should be reducing simply because the Tax Reform Committee, is expected to have come up with some of those recommendations. Let's begin, first of all, by, how far so far?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. So you're right. So I also joined the Nigerians to say that I'm impatient to see the results coming up, and more importantly, the impact on the people, particularly the small businesses and the poorest people who are most impacted by the reforms and the different policies. Unfortunately, fiscal policy matters are not as quick. So if you make a monetary policy decision today, you can see the impact tomorrow. Sometimes fiscals take a little longer. But even at that, I feel like we could have made progress faster. So we submitted our first report in October with so many recommendations, over 20 recommendations. I'll say as of today, maybe about 3 of them have been fully implemented. The remaining ones are different stages of implementation. The biggest instrument to implement our recommendation is the Emergency Economic Intervention Bill that we came up with, trying to amend about 15 different laws to implement some very important changes that will help with price stability in terms of inflation. That will help also in terms of costs. That will help in terms of providing relief to the right people who are most impacted. That will help take the burden off small businesses. That would also, in a large part, help with, foreign exchange as well. I know that's the purview of the central bank, but we also think it's an area where we can work together between the monetary and fiscal authorities, and also even align with trade policies. So those are different stages. So in fairness to the lawmakers, we haven't presented the bills to them. And that was also because once they had the budget for 2024, it became their priority. And we are aware that they were working around the clock, late night, just to get the budget out of the way. But now that that's out of the way, we want to try and prioritize this and send the bill to them, and for them to also pass it as a matter of urgency, so the Nigerian people can begin to feel the positive impact sooner rather than later.
So is there a timeline to this?
It's difficult to put a timeline to it. I can tell you what the steps are. So the internal processes of getting all the key stakeholders happy with the content is where we are now. The next phase will be for that to be presented to the Federal Executive Council. So it depends on when the next meeting will be, and then getting it to be on the agenda. And then once that has been done, then it's sent to the National Assembly. So at the National Assembly also, we have no control over that. But in our engagement with them, they recognize that this is an emergency issue, and therefore they would also prioritize it. So our expectation is that you should get that out of the National Assembly within 1 to 2 weeks. Given that we've done extensive consultation anyway, so this is something where once the National Assembly members are happy, you do public hearing, you pass it. Because it's coming from the executive, we don't see a problem with them signing it. So our estimation now, if I must give you any indication at all, is to say by the end of Q1. So latest by March, we should see these things come out. Fingers crossed.
Well, fingers crossed. So we are looking at, that is the execution, not the impact.
Yes.
So
you're right. So that's the execution, which is the biggest part of it. So what we've been trying to do is to work on the implementation mechanism to transmit the policy into real impact. We're already working on that. We're not waiting for the instrument to be out.
Okay.
So some of it will be, for example, we're asking states and local government to suspend nuisance taxes that just create problems with very little revenue to show for it. So we're already meeting with the governors In some cases, we set up small committees to discuss with their team. So we're already working on that. So once the thing is signed, there's no excuse. Just implement like the next day.
It's like you saw my list, because states is number one on my list here, because these are the places where the impact will be felt. And I always say this from time to time, that the federal government has citizens, states have indigents, and there are two completely different classes of people in any environment. So it's one thing to talk to states that have governors, executives. It's another thing altogether to talk to local governments, administrations that have to more or less take instructions, though unconstitutionally, from state governments to do whatever they need to do. We had a conversation on Saturday, and one individual came in with a list of about 60 taxes for a private car.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not. We've seen 73. Just one trip to transport goods from the north to the south, 73 stickers, 2,500, 3,000. This thing is really annoying, to be honest, right? Like, you wonder, how did we get here in the first place? In a country where there's the rule of law and you have government, it should not have happened in the first place.
Okay.
So, and I know you're a big fan of let's make local government work, and I think you should keep that. You should keep saying it, because anytime I listen to you, you have the opportunity. When you have the opportunity to say local government should work, and that is true. So, in our intelligence engagement with stakeholders, may not be right from the point of the law. What we have been advised is you get the governors to say yes. You solve more than 90% of the problem. So yes, ideally, to those things, we want even local government to suspend. Okay. So we're discussing with the governors first and demonstrating to them why this is good for the local government, good for them, and good for us as a people. So once the governors agree, then we're not going to ignore the local government, right? But what we will advise is, if you start with the local government and they say yes, and the governor say no, you are going nowhere. So we are now doing, top-down approach, but we'd engage with everyone, including even the conference of speakers, the forums of finance commissioners. We're engaging with everyone. It's more like strategy of who are the biggest stakeholders to make this happen quickly.
There are those who believe that most of the levies, duties, or whatever you want to call it, that are charged by this stickers and all, most of it doesn't. Most of those monies don't get to even the state governments themselves. It doesn't get to the coffers of government. So what are the benefits to the state government in the event that they agree indeed to these interventions? Because as we just finished having this conversation, the governors may not get the true picture of things if the power dynamics around them does not allow that to happen. So perhaps this is another marketing opportunity of sorts. Let the state governments know what are the benefits that come to them should these interventions that you are marketing to them, so to speak, come on stream.
Yeah, you're right, Ayo. So I think the starting point is even to say, what are they getting now? What benefits are they getting now? And what chaos are they creating now? Or maybe you call it disadvantages. So at the moment, according to the Bureau of Statistics for 2022, all the local governments in Nigeria that sent report to them didn't even collect 50 billion naira in a whole year. I'm talking 50 billion naira, not even 500 billion.
They didn't collect up to 50
billion.
They
did not collect up to 50 billion.
Do you mind pausing for a second?
Yes.
Let me quickly take on Juliana Olayinka, our correspondent who is in Davos, Switzerland now for the World Economic Forum. Juliana, thank you for joining us. Could you please give us a quick update? What's the latest?
Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me and
yes,
see
we can
me.
hear you. Go ahead.
It has been incredibly hectic over the past couple of days, as you can imagine. So day one, of course, was Monday of the World Economic Forum here in Davos. But I would say that it kicked off proper yesterday. Of course, I know that the channel was covering the events of His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima, who, of course, is here representing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And, it's absolutely important that Nigeria are here. Of course, I understand the mood music back home isn't exactly elated when it comes to government officials traveling across the world, and understandably so, because it comes with a hefty price tag. But just having been here over the past couple of days, whether you like it or not, it is in settings such as these that those big conversations take place. So this morning, I've been rushing around. In fact, I've just come out of this Africa Collective discussion, basically talking about the Continental Free Trade Agreement. When is it going to kick off? Is it going to kick off? And this was a really important discussion because, again, in terms of the negative connotations for a gathering such as Davos, it can be very, very white and very, very male. And it is really difficult to find platforms where Africa is a topic of discussion, especially in a positive way. So it has been very busy. Today we're expecting more. So yesterday I know that Volodymyr Zelensky obviously spoke, which was one of the reasons why it was so difficult to get anywhere, because of course, as you can imagine, his security detail is probably bigger than what you would see surrounding US President Joe Biden. So that was quite interesting. Today we're expecting more big names to show up. So I do believe the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is going to speak. We know that artificial intelligence is seen as the biggest threat to humanity. But I think certainly when Antonio Guterres speaks, he's going to be speaking about climate change. And of course, even though you've got a lot of people here saying they want to create sustainable development, if you have a look at the amount of private jets that have come into Switzerland, it doesn't really tally. So we're going to, I think there's going to be a change of tone once Antonio Guterres speaks today. And then, of course, we've got the French President Emmanuel Macron. He is going to be addressing the forum at some point. And there are, of course, various other engagements. I did actually read this morning that Crown Prince Salman from Saudi Arabia is in town. That's quite interesting, just to see how everybody is going to navigate some tense relationships, some not so tense. So yes, it is very busy. We're running around trying to make sure that we are capturing the most important aspects. But again, this is not necessarily Africa's terrain. So even though there are some people that may frown anytime an African leader is in an event like this, it is absolutely important because this is where key decisions are made.
Well, Juliana, I'm particularly interested in the part where you talked about the African continental free trade area, and the fact that you said it's neither male, that it's mostly male. Interesting thing is business is neither male nor female, nor is money, it's just money. But there is an aspect of that I'd like you to speak to, which is a private sector action plan for after. Any updates on that? Because that's one of the main topics of discussion we understand the Vice President was going to be having.
Yes, absolutely. But just to be clear, this event that I'm at is actually being run by a group called the Africa Collective. So though they are talking about, or the theme, apologies, was the African Continental Free Trade area, it's separate from the Secretariat, who were co-hosting the event yesterday that Senator Kashima, the Vice President, was speaking at. But no, you're absolutely right. I think, I think a lot of individuals are starting to get fatigued. They're starting to feel as if, we're talking a lot, we're pledging a lot, we're saying there is lots of possibility, but what exactly is happening And clearly it's going to take for this to become fruitful, multi-stakeholder collaboration and partnership, particularly because we know that the borders across the continent are so porous. It's almost impossible to think of us trading freely when there are so many issues in terms of infrastructure and logistics that we've got to climb over, including, a topic of a conversation in Nigeria, power and electricity. Until we get the basics right, some of these visions are merely that. And I think now, particularly this year, there are certain stakeholders that are saying, right, we can't just rely on leaders, world leaders, African leaders. Yes, we need the political will. Of course, you can't do it without them. You need the spirit. But I think we can't shift the blame. The private sector is absolutely fundamental in ensuring that, yes, this dream becomes a reality.
Well, Juliana, that's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for your reporting. And I know that we'll get more updates from you. Good luck and please stay safe. Well, back to the conversation we're having with Mr. Oyedele here in the studio. Well, it's still business, right?
Yeah.
But you were talking about the fact that the governors, this 50 billion you talked about, is it cumulative?
It's cumulative for the whole year.
For the whole year, and for the whole nation, or for just one state?
For the whole nation, and they did not even collect 50 billion. So which means the pain that our people are going through, the chances of getting any fiscal exchange or dividend of paying taxes from government is zero, because the money is not getting to the government. So
on the average, my apologies, yes. On the average, how much do you think, from the stickers and all of this information that you have, on the average, how much do you think these stickers, these levies and duties amount to?
No, I think only one local government should collect 50 billion. So the amount of wastage and leakage is mind-boggling. You don't want to fathom it. And it's really, to be honest, the reason why it's so painful is that these are the monies you're extracting from the poorest people. It's not like, I'm not saying it's okay to steal oil money, right? But when you extract money from people who are just trying to make ends meet on a day-to-day basis, it's painful that those monies are pilfered and, they are extorted and all of that. So the point to your question is, we think that where we are today, the state is not benefiting. The local government is not benefiting. And the people are sacrificing. They're going through pain, right? So what we are proposing, it's vastly different and benefits everyone. So imagine you have only just one tax. So our view is that there should be only one tax at the local government level. So you know how much you need to pay. You can pay it once or you can pay it instrumentally. And you pay it electronically. That's something, it shouldn't be that hard. It should not be harder to pay tax than it is to buy pizza, right? So the receipt comes on your phone. So that way the money gets to the government, the people pay less, government collects more. And then we can then move on to the second phase of what we're also working on, which is how do you spend that money to benefit the people. So our view is that the local government can collect more than 10 times what they are collecting now by following the recommendations that we're giving them. We also, as a sweetener, we're looking for sources where we can find at least 50 billion, which we can then use to compensate them for suspending the taxes we're asking them to suspend. We're also thinking about how do you bring all stakeholders on board. Because at the end of the day, if you stop the livelihood of anyone, whether they are earning it legitimately or not, you can create crises that will be difficult to manage. So, but once you bring everybody in, maybe we need to train those area boys and touts, give them uniform, and then they'll be the ones to ask you to show the evidence on your phone, right? And then they get paid a decent salary. And if you give them the skills, some of them will on their own move on from that job to something else, right? So our strategy is, let's think about what's best for our country and get all stakeholders to align. We do think that all the stakeholders, including the governors, want the best for their country. And we just need to make them see that big picture and then come along with us. So that's the plan that we have.
When you say that, first of all, 50 billion multiplied by 774, I was never good in maths, so I can't even put that figures together. But by 100 alone is something. But, I'm also intrigued by the fact that you said that, all of these impact execution, by March would be done and over. I would like you to give us some clarity on that, because if I remember correctly, some of the levies that are in the Constitution for local governments to collect are radio licenses, TV licenses, and all those things. And if those are going to change, it has to be a function of legislation. And we all know that constitution amendment is a long marathon of sorts on its own. What's the plan around that one?
Yeah, excellent question. So first, I'm not expecting every local government to make 50 billion, right? So 50 billion is what you expect from the biggest of them. And the biggest source of revenue for local government, to be honest, is property tax. So in many countries, you make more from property tax than any other form of taxes, because you can't run away with it. It's there physically. That source is guaranteed, So, and then in some countries, you just have council tax. Depending on the business you do, if you're a transporter, this is the amount you pay. If you're a tailor, if you're a vulcanizer. So that's one thing. Then, but to your question about how do you quickly implement something as complicated as things that are even enshrined in the law or the Constitution? Yeah, so you're right. So our approach is that we would amend not only the relevant laws, we would amend even the Constitution. But we also recognize that that will take time. Yeah, you need the National Assembly, you need the states, it's a long process. So, but we don't want to then wait until that process is concluded, because people are really struggling. So our view is that if you have the power, if the law has given you the power to collect a tax, then you have the power not to collect it, right? So we're discussing with them to say suspend it. Okay. So if a state says, I'm no longer collecting haulage taxes for moving things from one place to the other, I don't see anybody taking them to court, right? So we think that they can suspend it while we walk through the details of amending the law, and in the meantime find other revenues for them to in lieu of what they have given up. So that's the idea. So that's the reason why we are hopeful that this can be done quickly, because once they suspend it, we are working on an MOU already. We're visiting governors around. We have about 5 or 6 of them lined up over the next 30 days. Then we'll go to the governors forum. We'll be to NEC already. So there's an MOU. Once they sign and they suspend it, people feel the impact like the following day. So that's our hope and aspiration.
One of these critical ones is also in the area of imports and exports. So talk to us about those interventions, particularly at the ports, which we understand at some point someone said what unofficially is collected is about 100 million daily. Speak to us about the interventions in that regard.
Yeah, so export and import is a major area for our committee, because not only does it impact on the economy, it impacts on international trade, the exchange rate, and so on and so forth. So we've been speaking to the players from custom themselves to the exporters to the importers, and there are loads of issues. Many of those issues are things that are within our control as a country. If you want to export anything out of Nigeria, some of them say you need about 23 different regulators with permits and licenses that nobody's asking for where you're going. And that process can take you somewhere between 2 to 3 months. Imagine if you're exporting perishable goods. If you import as well, it's just as complicated. It takes a lot of processes. And in fact, if you import, mobile phone, and somebody at customs says, what you just imported now is a satellite equipment, right? You're stuck with them. You have to pay the rate they want you to pay, or you incur demurrage, or you let go of those products. So we're also planning to create, an institution that will intervene in that process to get you out of it. We also have recommendations to promote export in services and creative. It's easier for you to do export of services and, let's say, intangibles than it is to export physical goods, because physical goods require infrastructure to be competitive, whereas services need less of it. And we can make loads of money from that. So there are countries like India that make over $200 billion just from global process outsourcing. Philippines made $35 billion in 2022. So we're looking at those areas, focusing on not just goods, but services and intellectual property export, and simplifying the process of importing, including the single window for the customs. We're working with them to implement that quickly so that, because what tends to happen is you have 15 regulators asking you sometimes for the same thing at different times, and you have to pay charges, there are delays. Why can't you just create one government so everybody accesses that information at once?
Sometimes it looks like the ports in Lagos alone is a country on its own. And there are several questions around what your committee has done in that regard, but we're completely out of time now. We'll have to take them some other time.
No worries.
Thank you very much for your service and for everything that you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
Taiwo Oyedele is Chairman, Presidential Tax and Fiscal Policy Reforms Committee. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ayo.
Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed. We do have at least a comment or two about the development in Oyo State, where the unfortunate explosion occurred. Well, we did some new information coming through. But first of all, let's get to the courts, guys. Yes, we did tell you that the Supreme Court was going to decide on those two cases for Taraba and Sokoto State. So at the moment, the information we have at the moment is that first for Taraba, judgment has been, I beg your pardon, for Sokoto first. The Supreme Court has gone ahead and reserved judgment in that appeal filed by Saidu Omar challenging the election of Ahmad Aliyu as governor of Sokoto State. The 5-member panel, which was led by Justice Kudirat Kekerekun, adjourned after parties had adopted their process. Now, in that appeal, they're challenging Governor Idris on grounds that he forged his certificates, which was presented to INEC.
Well, a lot to say about what is happening in Oyo State. I'm sure that we'll be able to see visuals of that now. But the governor has issued a statement almost on all of his social media platforms. And looking at a few here, he said he visited the scene of the explosion, which occurred about 7:44 p.m. yesterday, January 16, in Bodija, Ibadan. So the location is Bodija. This unfortunate incident resulted in death and injury to residents in the vicinity and also affected property. We have already deployed first responders and all relevant agencies within Oyo State to carry out a comprehensive search and rescue operation. These will continue throughout. Now, earth-moving equipment, ambulances, emergency lights, etc. were deployed to the scene of the incident. In total, he says we have 77 injured victims so far, most of whom were treated and discharged, and 2 fatalities. I'm still looking at the time this was, this was issued. But he says, I urge our residents to, preliminary investigations by security agencies revealed that illegal miners occupying one of the houses in Bodija has stored explosive devices there, which caused the blast. Investigations are ongoing. All those found culpable will be brought to book. So this certainly is a developing story, because what has now been issued is a preliminary investigation. Their finding is that illegal miners are responsible for the blast which occurred in Bodija. We now know the location of this particular blast, and we'll certainly keep you updated when we get more information as to what precisely transpired. Was it just a storage? Did someone attempt to ignite it? What precisely could have caused the explosive devices to have ignited in the manner in which they did? Was it improper storage? These are questions which residents want. And then what's the scale of the destruction? How many people have been affected so far? We sincerely hope that there have not been any more fatalities. But these are certainly some of the information that we'll be bringing to you as soon as we have them. Chamberlain.
Yes, indeed. And Henry's email talking about FCT security. He wants the FCT minister and the police to do a lot more to ensure security. So, Henry, thank you for your messages. And that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Do stay safe.